Jack Carr and I have more in common than I expected. We both served as Navy officers. We both retired. We both sat down afterward and started writing thrillers about men pulling threads to unravel conspiracies. And when I read the foreword to his new book, he listed the things that shaped him: Magnum P.I, Tom Clancy, Lethal Weapon. And it surprised me because it would have been my exact same list. Same service, same influences, but our books could not be more different. His is gunfights and tactical movement and violence delivered with total authority. Mine is a man in a Pentagon hallway trying to figure out what a dead man's letter is actually saying. And I've got a theory about why. It has to do with the jobs we chose and why we chose them. So let's talk about the fourth option. First, the review. The fourth option came out in May, and it's a departure for Carr. This is his first novel outside the James Reese universe, and it launches a new series. He also didn't write it alone. He co-wrote it with M.P. Woodward, the man who picked up the Jack Ryan Jr. series after Tom Clancy died. The premise of the fourth option is in the title. When law enforcement fails, when the courts fail, when the prison systems fail, there's one option left, the fourth option. Carr said the idea dates back to 2014, when he spread his story concepts around a table as he prepared to leave the SEAL teams, trying to pick which one would become his first novel. He picked the terminal list, but this one stayed with him. The hero is Chris Walker, a former SEAL and CIA ground branch operative. When we meet him, he's living in an 80s camper van, and he is not okay. He carries the death of his former chief, and he's at the end of his rope when a phone call pulls him back. The wife of the teammate he lost has now lost her son, and she needs help from outside the system. That investigation opens into a drug conspiracy, running into the highest places and spread throughout the New Orleans Police Department. Carr has said the roots of his book are in the westerns of his youth, a modern tribute to Have Gun Will Travel and the stranger who rides into town. Once you know that, you can't miss it. Walker is a gunfighter with a code, arriving where the institutions have already failed. If you like reviews that get into the nitty-gritty and not just the plot, then hit subscribe. What works is the thing that Carr has always been best at. It helps me more than you think. Now let's get into what works and what doesn't. The tactical writing is spot on. When Walker clears a room or handles a weapon, there is zero daylight between the author and the page. He isn't approximating that world from research because he lived in it. The bigger surprise is Walker himself. Carr took a real risk building a protagonist who starts the book broken. Reviewers have called this book his most cerebral book, an investigative story wrapped in a hard-charging thriller, and I'd agree. There's more detective work here than in anything else he's written. But what doesn't land for me is the protagonist himself. Like I said before, we meet him when he's broken, about to end it all because of the grief he carries from the death of his teammates he feels responsible for. It's a cliche that this genre and Carr himself seems overly reliant on, and Walker's constant interiority seems to belabor the point. He's sad and he feels responsible. We get it. Look, that's Carr's prerogative, and I'm sure it's one that's at least partially lived by him. He comes from a Navy world different than mine. So here's the puzzle. Two officers, same Navy, same influences, both writing conspiracy thrillers. His answer to a locked door is an improvised explosive device, where mine is a records request. In my novel, Jeff Coburn's biggest weapon is a stack of contract documents and the ability to notice that a chronology has been doctored. There are consequences and there is danger, and there's also a long stretch in the middle where a man reads a letter over and over until the capital letters start meaning something. That's my instinct on the page, and it never occurred to me to write it any other way. Carr was a SEAL. He led assault and sniper teams. His professional life was direct action, closing distance and resolving a problem with immediate physical force. I was a Naval Flight Officer. My professional life happened at altitude. We watched, we tracked, we built a picture over hours out of fragments, and most of the time the resolution belonged to somebody else. I once spent 10 hours over Somalia looking down at the ground. The entire resolution was determined by somebody else in a different country, reviewing the pictures that we had taken. Years of that trains a specific instinct. Information first, and the belief that the answer lies in what you've already observed if you look long enough. If you want to follow the book that this theory produced, I'm launching my thriller Redacted in October, and I write about it at tjstecker.com. Free newsletter, link below. Now let me get back to my theory. So the easy version is that your service shapes your writing, and the frame of reference becomes your voice. But I don't think that's the whole thing, because it runs the other way too. Nobody assigns you to the SEAL teams by accident. You volunteer, repeatedly, through a selection process designed to remove everyone who isn't wired for it. And nobody ends up as a flight officer staring at a sensor display for hours unless something in them is already comfortable with the long watch. Which means the causation is a loop. The personality selects the service sharpens the personality, and years later the same personality picks up a pen and writes the only kind of book it knows how to write. Carr didn't decide to write action. Action is how his mind solves a problem. And I didn't decide to write a slow burn because patience is how my mind works. And here's the detail that convinced me I'm onto something. Remember M.P. Woodward, the co-author? Before his writing career, he served as a U.S. Naval Intelligence Officer. So the most investigative, most cerebral book Jack Carr has published is the one he wrote with an intelligence officer. A direct action guy and a collection guy sharing a manuscript. The book has both engines in it because the writing room had both frames of reference in it. That's my whole theory right there. So here's what that means for you. Stop trying to write like the author you admire. You'll produce a competent imitation at best. Because their instincts came from a life you didn't live. Find the thing your own history trained you to notice. If you were a nurse, you know how people behave in the worst hour of their lives. If you drove a truck, you know America at 3 a.m. That knowledge is your frame of reference. And it's the only thing in your mind that nobody else can copy. I can't write Jack Carr's book. He can't write mine. That's not saying one's better than the other, it's just offering two different perspectives. The fourth option is worth your time, especially if you wanted Carr to slow down and let a mystery breathe. So tell me in the comments what your job taught you to notice, and how it shows up in what you write. So until next time, I'll see you by the fire.